Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, here with some post-fight comments on Timothy Bradley's win over Devon Alexander in a battle of unbeatens. Now, I was really impressed by Timothy Bradley. People knew I was impressed going in, but I was actually even more impressed by what I saw. I've been following the commentary on my YouTube channel page. It's great commentary, and I get the feeling that I was much more impressed than others watching the fight. Some of the comments I'm reading are that Timothy Bradley lacks power, Timothy Bradley lacks head movement, Timothy Bradley is too small, Timothy Bradley uses his head too much, Devon Alexander wasn't at his best. The referee was pro Bradley. Those are just some of the comments that I'm reading. Let me say, I thought that Bradley's fight style was one of the best I've seen in a long time. I really thought he was at the top of his game. Let me also pub his trainer. I thought his trainer Diaz is an excellent trainer. I think it's important to remember that there are a lot of great trainers in the sport, not named Emmanuel Stewart, Freddie Roach, Nacho Beristain. They're actually a whole other group of trainers, Roberto Garcia and Diaz, um, Timothy Bradley's trainer, who are also doing A-plus work. And it's debatable to me who had a better night, Timothy Bradley or his corner men, because I thought the corner gave Timothy Bradley great advice all night long. Even when Bradley won rounds, his corner was pushing him to use all of his skills and talents. I was as impressed with the corner as I was with Timothy Bradley, and I thought Bradley was very impressive. I also thought a point that Emmanuel Stewart made really summed up why Bradley is a great fighter. Stewart was pointing out that Bradley, and keep in mind, Bradley was in with a very tough southpaw who has a very good jab, right? Stewart was pointing out that Bradley was not only, you know, effortlessly getting by the jab, right? We didn't see Bradley getting busted up by Devon Alexander's jab. And keep in mind, contrast Bradley easily ducking one of the better jabs in the division, with Juan Urango getting battered at the end of that jab, right? Stewart was pointing out that Bradley was actually not even throwing punches until he was right up on Devon Alexander. That's a real high level. I know it seems real basic, but think about it. When you're facing a guy with a great jab and great hand speed, Devon Alexander really is gifted with very quick hands. It's a bit stunning that any opponent would be able to literally try to walk him down and do so without getting hit in any kind of meaningful way. I know the punch stat numbers show that Alexander landed a lot of punches. I got to tell you, as I watched the fight, I didn't see it. If Alexander landed a lot of punches, they weren't big punches, right? Bradley seemed to be able to get inside relatively unscathed. And then what I love too is once Bradley got inside, Bradley literally went about attacking Devon Alexander's body. I was very impressed. I mean, a lot of fighters ignore the body. Go look at some old Ali tapes. Ali, one of my favorite fighters, certainly an all-time great. But Ali neglected the body. Lord knows in boxing today you have a lot of headhunters and very few guys who can hit to the body. I thought Timothy Bradley, who supposedly is light punching, put in major body work. I was expecting him to throw, counter straight rights to Alexander's head. He actually even exceeded my expectations. He was throwing counters to the body, and this was against a very fast opponent. Bradley impressed the heck out of me. I thought, too, it's always a fascinating visual when you see a guy who's shorter walking down a taller opponent. And I was a little bit stunned that Bradley, from the opening bell, decided that he was going to try to walk down Devon Alexander. And by the third round, you saw Alexander backing up. I thought Alexander looked very confused, very perplexed. I was surprised that Alexander, at the end of the fight, thought that he was ahead in the fight because my scorecard was actually in line with two of the three judges. I had Timothy Bradley winning that fight by at least 4 rounds. And I thought Devon Alexander, he's young. I thought his youth showed, right? Because Alexander didn't really know how to cover up his body. Alexander, was going backwards for most of the fight. I didn't really see him try to come forward until the later rounds. Bradley was able to literally hit him to the body without any kind of return body attack from Devon Alexander. And I just liked, Bradley's attitude, which was, hey, I'm not going to box you. I'm going to smother you. And that's exactly what he did without taking too much punishment. Let me talk about the possibility of Timothy Bradley against some other fighters, right? Manny Pacquiao. He's big name. Pacquiao is the same size, if not slightly smaller, than Timothy Bradley, right? I know Pacquiao weighs more. I'm just talking in terms of height and how they fight, right? And my point to you is simply Pacquiao, in my opinion, and I understand this is controversial, but I think Pacquiao in general hits harder on a consistent basis than Devon Alexander. I think Alexander is a guy who has a big uppercut, right? That uppercut is a game changer, but he doesn't consistently hit you with the power shots, the number of power shots per round that Manny Pacquiao would hit you with. And Pacquiao um, knows how to handle his hand speed better than Devon Alexander. Alexander seems to throw, in my opinion, and I'm not a boxing trainer, I'm just a fan, but Alexander seems to throw too many jabs, in my opinion. At one point, Max Kellerman pointed out that Alexander had only landed something like 18% of his jabs. Unfortunately, this is not the first fight where Alexander landed a low percentage of his jabs, and I thought Alexander's volume was off. Here you have a little man in front of him who's not supposed to be a big hitter, and Alexander didn't empty the gun. In other words, early on, I thought Alexander was going to throw a bunch of power shots, whether they landed or not, just to establish that he was the puncher in the fight. Keep in mind, a lot of these fights are scored on ring generalship, and I thought he was going to try to send a message that, he was the big man in the ring. He didn't do it. And it was a bit surprising. It looked like he left some stuff on the table because he had some hand speed, but you only saw flashes of it, and too much of that hand speed was caught up with his jab, right? He didn't really seem to know how to handle his speed like Manny Pacquiao. Pacquiao is fast, but Pacquiao's also busy, and Pacquiao is also accurate. Let me point out, too, that Devon Alexander was going backwards, then he kept going backwards, then he seemed to find himself up on the ropes, and he seemed to have a problem all night with Timothy Bradley's head. Now, if Bradley's head is a weapon, even though Pacquiao's left-handed, because they're the same height, I think that fight has a different dynamic. I don't believe his head would be as big of a factor with Pacquiao, who has great foot movement and wouldn't be there long enough to really get hit in the head. So I think Manny Pacquiao against Timothy Bradley, I think that's a 5-star fight. I think that's a great fight. I think what we would be seeing is Bradley coming forward, chasing down a guy who's an ambush fighter. I believe that's the way to beat ambush fighters, but I believe Bradley would be met with much more resistance than he was in this fight. In other words, he wouldn't just be able to dodge a jab and then get inside. He would literally be dealing with lateral movement, which we did not see from Devon Alexander. He'd be dealing with lateral movement, faster hands, and different combinations. Against Floyd Mayweather, I think that's an even better tactical fight. Understand that while Devon Alexander uh, didn't really protect his body, right, and seemed confused and bothered when Timothy Bradley got inside, understand Floyd Mayweather fights out of a Philly shell. He always has a hand draped down across his body. He's never facing you head on. He's always turned to the side. If you're going to hit him in the face, you're going to have to get through his left shoulder, right? It's very hard to headbutt him because as you lean in, you're going to be leaning into his shoulder. Also, Floyd, I know Larry Merchant feels that Floyd doesn't throw enough volume, but against a fighter like Timothy Bradley, I think Floyd would be judicious with his shots. Floyd has a very devastating left hook. Also, Floyd throws a very nice overhand right. You didn't see overhand stuff coming from Devon Alexander. Alexander seemed to be trying to pace himself and didn't really empty the gun. I think against Mayweather, I think Bradley would have a hard time getting to Mayweather's body. I think Bradley would get hit with counters on the way in. But that fight, too, just like the Pacquiao fight, would be very competitive because Bradley has the foot speed to keep up with Mayweather. And Bradley is a switch. He can either be a counterpuncher or he can be a lead, right? Mayweather is predominantly a counterpuncher, and I get the feeling Bradley's advanced enough to know how to dictate the pace of the fight in such a way to make it tough for Floyd Mayweather. So I'm very bullish on Timothy Bradley. He really impressed me quite a bit in this fight. I'm hoping that Timothy Bradley gets a crack at the biggest names in boxing, including Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. Let me say this. I believe Amir Khan isn't ready for Timothy Bradley, in my opinion. I actually think that if they fought today, I personally would take Timothy Bradley in that fight because there, and I believe Emmanuel Stewart said it during the telecast, I think Bradley's smaller height would actually give him the advantage in that fight because I'm not sure if Amir Khan knows what to do if a guy starts to walk him down and can neutralize his jab. You know, Amir Khan does have blinding hand speed, so too did Timothy Bradley. Amir Khan does have power. In particular, he has a very hard right hand, and you saw him put down Marcos Maidana with a body shot, right? I believe that was a left. He's offensively gifted. The problem, though, is I don't believe Amir Khan can fight inside. And the things that are normally assets for him, his long reach, for example, would actually be detriments if Timothy Bradley could get inside like he did against Devon Alexander. To sum up, I'd take Bradley right now over Amir Khan. With regard to Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, I'm going to have to think about those a little bit more because I believe both of those fights are very competitive fights. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. Leave your comments for me at gamblersadvisory.com on Facebook. That actually allows comments from people, and I really hope to hear from as many boxing fans as possible. Thanks for watching.